Have you got any more time for maybe one or two other M words?
M words, yeah. I have a bone to pick with you, Luke.
Yeah, go on.
So this whole M word thing is purely coincidental.
Hmm.
I don't wait 2 years for an M word to come along and then get in touch with you. It just happens to be that the things that you and I want to talk to you about always begin with an M. And there was another one, and because we spoke, was it earlier in the year or even the end of last year? And I
Yeah.
said, look, are you watching The Mandalorian? And you were like, yeah, it's great, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, yeah. I said, why don't we do a podcast about it? And you said, oh no, I've already got some other friends I'm going to do a podcast about The Mandalorian with.
Yeah. Well,
And
I
I thought,
didn't.
okay, oh, great. I look forward to listening to that when it comes out, but it never did.
Yeah.
So let's talk about The Mandalorian.
Yeah, just to explain, just that like, a few people got in touch with me, like listeners said, "Hey, when are you going to do an episode about the Mandalorian?" Because people know that I'm sort of a Star Wars fan, although these days, but and then yeah, one of my friends got in touch and said, "Hey, you're going to do something about the Mandalorian?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm definitely would like to do that." And then I just didn't, and then the sort of the moment passed.
Yeah.
Like some things are just in the some things are just sort of in the zeitgeist, and you want to talk about them. For example, at the moment, I just really want to talk about the new Beatles documentary, and just like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
really inspired to talk about that. But then in terms of just the time that I have to record and prepare episodes and do them, sometimes the window of availability is not there, and then then the next thing comes along. Like the I sometimes compare doing this podcast, it's a bit like a train. It's just constantly
Yeah, yeah.
moving forwards, and it's hard to sort of like stop it and do maintenance on it or stop at certain places. It's just constantly moving forward. So yeah, that's why. But I think it's good to talk about The Mandalorian now for two reasons. One reason is that the book of Boba Fett is coming out, which is the next sort of Star Wars TV series.
Mm.
And that is, I think, going to be a sort of a continuation or maybe a spin-off from The Mandalorian. So it is going to be back on, on people's minds again.
Mm.
And secondly, the other thing is that we can probably do spoilers now, because it's
Yeah.
been quite a long time since Series 2 was released, was streamed. And so I think it's safe to talk about spoilers. But can you remember? Can you remember all the things that you wanted to say about it?
You know, you're right. The spoiler, because there's one huge spoiler at the end of season 2, and even now, I'm not sure I feel comfortable talking too much about that. There was a very exciting appearance from a character.
I want to talk about it, though.
You want to talk about it?
Yeah, let's do it. Come on. Spoiler alert for the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian. If you don't want to know what happens at the end, then, then use your discretion going forwards.
For me, the thing that I really liked about The Mandalorian was the first season. It was just nice being back in that universe. I think a bit like you, I really liked the first Star Wars films, hated the prequels, was like a bit about the last three. But there's
Especially
something.
Rise of Skywalker. Oh my God, absolute disaster. But anyway, don't get me started on that. I would like to say, though, that my relationship with Star Wars is, as you said, I love the original trilogy. And I think you and I both are sort of the similar generation, same generation where, we grew up with the toys. And so it's sort of very special for us, Star Wars. Then the prequels came out. A whole new generation of people love the prequels and think they're great, but it's divided opinion. We don't really like it. Some parts of it were good, but on the whole, we weren't so keen on the prequels. And then the new sequel trilogy came out. Personally, I quite liked The Force Awakens, and I was willing to give it a chance. It's like, okay, they got some things right. The universe felt right. It looked right. Maybe the new characters, the writing wasn't so good, really. And J.J. Abrams, the director, doesn't really know how to conclude a story. He's good at setting up mysteries, but not very good at answering, dealing with them.
He always likes to have a closed box, doesn't he? He was like on Lost. There was the hatch. There's always a mystery box of some description.
But it's ultimately disappointing because he's good at building up expectations and teasing ideas, but they're not very good at delivering a proper narrative that concludes in a satisfying way. The Last Jedi, I actually loved it when I saw it in the cinema. I saw it because films are released a couple of days earlier in France than the
Mm,
rest of the world for some reason. And so I went to see it in the morning, the day it was released. Hadn't seen any of the reviews or comments from other people. Sat in the cinema and absolutely loved it. I had a fantastic time because I thought they're doing something different with the
yeah,
story, and Luke Skywalker's in it. And I love Mark Hamill, and I wasn't being all critical about it. I just enjoyed the ride and didn't
yeah,
know what was going to happen next. And then I saw all the online hate for it, and I couldn't understand it. I kind of
yeah.
understand where they're coming from now, having thought about it. Then the Last Jedi, no, the Rise of Skywalker is the third one. I thought, again, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, that was amazing. But then when I actually tried to just talk about it on the podcast, I realized, oh, wait a minute, no, it's awful. When I really thought about it, I realized it was awful. And my summary of that is it's shiny bollocks. Um, Shiny bollocks. It's shiny. It looks fantastic, but it's just bollocks.
you know,
It's very
the
disappointing, really.
the worst thing about that was they did the first. I'm like the Force Awakens. I kind of thought this is great. It's setting the scene. It's got new characters. There's a logical continuation here. I like that a lot. And then the second one, right? Was it Last
The
Skywalker, the
Last
Last Jedi?
Jedi, yeah,
That was brilliant. Like you, I thought it was amazing because it was different and it was taking it in an interesting direction. But then you read all the stuff about how there was arguments and rewrites and all that kind of stuff. But then the third film kind of swept the second film under the carpet like it didn't happen. And it
yeah.
just tied up all the loose ends from the first film. So it was like, what was the point of that? And it was just overblown. There was too much going on,
It made no sense at
and
all.
it's a bit like Harry Potter looking for Horcruxes, with having to get all these bits from all over the galaxy. And
Bring back Palpatine, not necessarily a bad idea, but it just got really, really stupid, like really badly stupid. Anyway,
so the Mandalorian came along at the right time because I was feeling a bit like, oh, that was a bit disappointing. But then we were straight back into that kind of original universe, and there was just so many little things in that first season, like the whole thing with the Jawas, and he's driving that big sand crawler machine, all these little nods to the original, and the fact that, did you say Boba Fett or Boba Fett?
I say Boba Fett.
Boba Fett, potato. He died supposedly in Return of the Jedi, and then you find they've got his armor and stuff, and I just like those nods to the original trilogy, and
Mhm.
it's made with such kind of love and care and understanding of what fans liked, and even if nothing much really happens in that first season, it's just like a western. I like the fact that it's like a stranger in town. He goes to a new place every week, and he helps somebody out, and it's all kind of rooted in that.
It's like a 90s TV show. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? You know
yeah,
those 90s TV shows where it's just like a character, yeah, like a Western, a character who goes from town to town and has little mini adventures, little mini stories.
yeah,
And in the first season, there is that general arc of like the child, this
yeah,
little Grogu. We learn his name is Grogu and who he is, and we sort of start to realize he's incredibly important, and bad guys are trying to get him, and lots of things like that. And so there is a bit of an arc that begins, and it's much more developed in the second season. But yeah, I love that idea that it's like a 90s TV show, and it's sort of almost like the aesthetic of it was like that too.
yeah,
That one of the things that we like about the original Star Wars trilogy is the production design, and how some of it's kind of sketchy. Like there are those moments in the original film where little mistakes happen, like a
yeah,
stormtrooper whacks his head on the
yeah,
ceiling and stuff like that. And clearly the stormtroopers can't really see through their helmets very well, and they're struggling to shoot. And it's like really sketchy. The bits are falling off the set. And in The Mandalorian, you get that feeling of everything's a
yeah,
bit sketchy. Some of the characters got these rubber masks on that sort of bend it awkwardly when they turn.
yeah,
And even the Mandalorian himself, that the actor can't see out of the helmet
yeah.
properly. But those limitations and those little problems sort of make it cute. And
Yeah, and also there was a thing, I think it was in the second season, where they've got two stormtroopers trying to shoot a can, and they
yeah,
keep missing, and it's that joke that the stormtroopers are just got the worst aim, and he's like, there must be something wrong with this gun, you know?
yeah. it got a bit self-referential at that point, but that's fun.
That's fun, but you're right in the sense that it is like a '90s TV show because there's. Do you remember there's certain episodes where it's more or less filmed in the same location,
Hmm.
and there's the prison break. There's one where they had to break a prisoner out of a facility with Bill
Uh-huh.
Burr. Bill
Bill
Burr was in
Burr's
it,
in that one. Yeah,
and
yeah.
he was that was
Mm.
that was he was interesting. So
Yeah.
there's some of them which I was reading this thing. They had the Friends reunion not so long ago. I was reading this thing about how in order to make the budget last to film a season, they had to isolate certain episodes just in one location. So the famous one is the bit where they're all getting ready to go out and Joey puts on all of Chandler's clothes. That one.
I don't
Um,
remember that one.
and it's
Yeah.
just all filmed in the apartment.
Right.
And there was elements of that in the Mandalorian as well. And it just means that you've got to craft more engaging stories. And it's all about storytelling for me. Like right now, we're watching Succession. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
It's
Yeah.
just incredible. It's just it's just really well written, and it's just this story arc, and I think that's what kind of catches you, and that's what brings you in. And I think with the Mandalorian, there's a story arc not just of what happens to Grogu, but also what happens to him. The whole thing about how he can't let his face be seen, and because this is the way, and all that kind of stuff.
Some bits are a bit cheesy. Like some of the dialogue is a bit cheesy. Like
Yeah.
there's lots of people talking about, he needs to be with his own kind. Everyone's talking
Mm,
about people's, like, that sort of cheesy Star Wars, like a George Lucas dialogue that they've tried to replicate. And
mm,
at times it's a bit cringeworthy. But ultimately, yeah, I enjoyed the show. I thought the second series was better,
yeah.
and there were some really exciting moments in that. And plus, all this kind of fan service for the people who've seen the cartoons and stuff, which I haven't seen, so I don't know about those other
No,
Mandalorian characters really, and the dark saber and stuff. That doesn't really mean a lot to me.
it's part of the mythology, apparently. Yeah, I read something about that as well. There's a one cat, I can't remember what her name was, but there was one of the Jedi's that was in one of the episodes, and fans were very excited that she was in there.
Ashoka Tano or something, that she's
I think,
in. She's in one of the Star Wars cartoons, and she's
yeah.
sort of like trains with Anakin Skywalker and
And
stuff.
apparently there's a story arc in that that's all about the Dark Blade, and they think it's gonna. Anyway, we're getting quite geeky here. But the other thing is quite nice is how at the end of the original Star Wars trilogy, you think, okay, great, they've won. It's amazing. The goodies have won, the baddies have lost. All the Ewoks are dancing. And then at the end of the Force Awakens and those films, I think I said to you or said to somebody, it just makes me a bit sad because all of their lives, Han, Luke, and Leia, they've all gone wrong. None of them are happy. None of them got the sort of the success or the happiness that they
Mm,
wanted.
mm.
And then the new canon, things like Rogue One, and then The Mandalorian, shows you kind of what happened to the universe after that. And one of the themes that goes through The Mandalorian is how the rebellion, who are now the New Republic, they're trying to police the galaxy, and they're all sort of like lone guys flying around in X-fighters, X-wings, saying, "Well, there's nothing I can do, mate," you know. So it's that fallout from a great kind of coup, an overthrow, a revolution, and how do you rebuild from there? I thought that was quite an interesting side of it as well.
Yeah, and that does feed into the Wild West thing, which
Yeah,
is all about attempting to civilize potentially a universe that can't be civilized, and there are sort of competing forces. There's the sort of the more democratic goodies, the Republic, and then the dark side, the Empire or the New Order or whatever they call the First Order.
mm,
It's hard to know exactly where it all fits in the timeline. It's
yeah,
after Return of the Jedi, basically, and and then the Mandalorian is just sort of like stuck in the middle of it all. He's just a man trying to make his way through the universe,
yeah.
as Boba Fett says.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
interesting.
should we talk about the big spoiler then? Because you just mentioned Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, let's talk about the big spoiler, the moment that happens at the end of the second series. So something happens. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want the spoiler, this is when you need to, I don't know what, hit the ejector seat or skip forwards or something like that. Maybe I can put something on the screen to say skip forwards by 5 minutes or something. So yeah, what happens then at the end of the second series?
So it all culminates with the Mandalorian and Grogu being on this spaceship, and they've got
Grogu's been sort of taken.
no, they got him. They've got him back by this point. Grogu had been taken, but they managed to rescue him. And because what they were doing with Grogu, they're trying to get him back to his kind, and his kind are the Jedi. So they took him to that Jedi temple, and he sort of started using the Force, but he attracted the baddies, and they came and took him, and then they managed to get Grogu back, and then they're on this.
They go to this big spaceship where Grogu had been, kept by
right.
the guy from Breaking Bad.
Yeah. Darth Moff Sidious.
Gus Fring. Darth Gus Fring or whatever, Sidious. Gus Fring from Breaking Bad basically has got him. Sorry for the Star Wars fans who know his name and are hating the fact that we're not using the right names. I do apologize. I mean, we're geeky, but we're not that geeky, right?
Yeah.
So Grogu's been taken by this bad sort of
dude,
bad guy, bad dude, and they've managed to get Grogu back somehow. The Mandalorian has a fight with Gus Fring in very exciting circumstances, and there's like Beskar armor and a Beskar spear and the dark saber.
Oh yes, I remember that.
It's really cool stuff. And but they got Grogu back, but they don't realize that Gus Fring has called for backup.
He's got like a full metal army, hasn't he?
It's a full, very nasty looking army of super robot stormtrooper sort of Terminators who arrive, and they're really badass, and there's like way too many of them, and there's only a few Mandalorians. They're totally outnumbered.
They're on the bridge, aren't they? They're on the bridge of the ship. They've closed the doors, and these things are like banging on the doors, and you can see the dents coming in, and you think, oh, how are they going to get out of this?
Yeah, a bit of a cliffhanger moment, but
a cliffhanger, and then an X-wing flies past, and one of the characters says, "Oh, wow, one X-wing? Is that all they've sent?"
Yeah.
And then because they're on the bridge, they've got all these sort of screens with security cameras, and you see this shadowy figure emerge. Who is it? Who's it going to be? A hooded figure.
Character in a cape and a hood.
And then he fires up a lightsaber, and it's a green lightsaber. And you're thinking, oh my God, could it be?
Can they? Is that possible? How does that going to fit in the timeline? Really? Is that really possibly Luke Skywalker?
And listeners, it was Luke Skywalker, and he basically annihilates all the robots, comes into the bridge, and then they give him little Yoda, Grogu. And that's how it finishes.
I have to say, it's a very touching moment. I mean, where the Mandalorian, what's his name? I can't remember. Sorry, Star Wars fans. I'm so sorry. We can't remember his name. But then let's say the Mandalorian has to hand over Grogu, this little...
Jin. He's called Jin.
His name's Jin. They have to hand over this little baby Yoda, as everyone's calling him. And they've obviously bonded like really strongly over the course of the 2 seasons. And it's a very touching moment. I mean, I wiped away a tear, I have to say, at that moment. And that's really great that I was emotionally invested and engaged. That's what we want from good stories and especially from Star Wars. So that was very interesting. But so what did you think, though, of the return of Luke Skywalker? How did it...
Oh, I loved it. We talked about spoilers before. Unfortunately, I spoiled it for myself, and I kind of knew ahead of time that it was going to happen. But it was still very, very cool, very, very cleverly done. And I mean, he was very sort of CGI, wasn't he? Because it was young Luke Skywalker, and old Mark Hamill can't play him. But I thought it looked realistic enough.
It was a little bit floaty face, sort of uncanny valley, a little bit to me. I mean, the way they did it was very clever. That they had, first of all, the actor who was doing the physical stuff, and it was a really cool sequence of him dispatching all these robots, and it was another hallway lightsaber sequence. I mean, we had one in Rogue One where Darth Vader tears his way through some rebel guards or whatever, and that's awesome. And then so it was another hallway sequence, and that was really great. And he showed off all his amazing skills and abilities, which we hadn't really seen before. So it's a little bit of like, oh, well, oh, he's like so much more uh, um, skilled than he was in Return of the Jedi. Okay, maybe he's been training. All right, fine. I'll suspend my disbelief. But then and I was like, oh, this has better be good. And he pulled off the hood, and I have to say, it was a little bit like his face was just kind of floating in front of like
Yeah.
this outfit. I mean, they had the physical actor, the guy who played the body of young Luke, and they used Mark Hamill as well to act out the scene.
Okay.
And then they mapped the young Luke's face onto the face of old Mark Hamill. So like really clever motion capture stuff that they did. But I don't know, the line around his face was just I was just like, nah, sorry, it's still not quite right. Still looks like a floaty little graphic in front of his face, even though it was really good. It wasn't good enough.
I'd have to watch it again. You know what? You know what spoiled it for me? I saw somebody had cut that whole sequence where he comes onto the ship and kills all the droids, and they cut it to Bonnie Tyler's holding out for a hero. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, I will send it to you. It is very, very good. So it's a song that was big here in the 80s, and somebody cut the whole sequence.
Hero.
Yeah,
I'm holding out for a hero at the end of the night.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I'll send that to you. And I was like, oh, this is, that, and that's what I saw. That's what spoiled it for me. So I hadn't actually watched the real scene, but I had seen the sort of the Bonnie Tyler version.
Okay.
But yeah, just quickly on Star Wars, it just reminded me of something, because today is the 1st of December that we're recording this. And so have you got an advent calendar, Luke?
Yes.
Yeah. What have you got on your advent calendar? Is it a chocolate one?
Well, things are so crazy. We've got two. We've got one which is just like little pictures behind doors, and then we've got another one which is like these little sort of pouches that hang from hooks. Okay. And because we're so disorganized, we haven't put anything in the pouches yet. So like to be honest, like last night we're like, oh god, it's the 1st of December tomorrow. What are we going to put in the advent calendar? And it was just like, I don't know, we'll find something. So that's another thing I'm going to do today is like I buy some chocolate coins or something and put them in there.
Yeah, put that in there. There's so many things that you forget. It's tough. But a friend of mine sent me a picture of his advent calendar, and it's a Star Wars advent calendar, and it says 12 pairs of socks. So I'm like, 12 pairs of socks? Are there any 12 days on the lunar cycle of Tatooine? What's going on there? And he said, no, there's 24 doors. I just get one sock a day.
Oh, that's great. I would love a calendar like that.
It sounds terrible. It's almost cruel. So he opens one sock. When am I going to get the matching sock? Is it going to be tomorrow? Is it going to be on the 23rd? When is it going to come?
Because he wants to be able to wear the socks immediately, but he's going to have to wait. And it's not necessarily one sock and then the left foot and then the right foot of that pair the next day. It's just random. So by the end of the month, he'll be able to actually wear the socks.
So
they Star Wars socks as well.
They are Star Wars socks. So he said, I think his wife got it for him, and he said, I didn't want to say anything in case you put me in a Vader death grip. So I was like, I find your lack of socks disturbing.
Okay, well, on that note, it's probably a good time to stop because you've got a meeting now in the metaverse. In the metaverse, is that your meeting there? I don't know.
All of our meetings, all of our team meetings are in the metaverse, and it's the first couple. I was like, this is so, because like my boss is just flying around, and then other people are doing other stuff, but it's you get used to it, and it actually, I don't know what it is, but it makes you much more focused on what you're doing. I don't know why. I'm still trying to understand the sort of the dynamics behind that, but there's something about having to focus, because we'll sort of walk around these environments and talk about stuff as we go. So I'm kind of engaged in what I'm doing, and it helps you listen. And I think from a learning perspective, that really aids retention, that sort of learning by doing. So it works as well in the meeting environment. So yeah.
Great. Well, it was really good to chat to you again. I hope the listeners have enjoyed listening to us talking, and all the best. And I look forward to doing a podcast with you in the metaverse at some point. That would be really cool.
Definitely. Thanks, everyone. Great to be back again.
Cheers. Bye for now.
Bye. Bye-bye.